I'm David J. Dill with the Fount Online News, and I am so blessed and privileged to be here with Mr. Doug Kaufmann. Truly, you're a great man, and I know you probably don't like to think of yourself as such, because I know your spirit, you're a humble man, but I consider what you're doing is great work. And one of the things that I wanted to introduce you to my audience, because a lot of them don't know you, they don't know about the work that you're involved with. We're here at Hermosa Studios in Rockwall, Texas, where Mr. Kaufmann is the host of a television show by the name of Know the Cause. And when it comes to exposing fungus as being the most overlooked cause of disease in America in our modern time on a grand scale, and you even go on the road with your message, I just want to let people know that Doug is a pioneer in this aspect of the industry. He's my mentor, and I'm just so proud to be able to say that you're my friend as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you taking the time out to do this with us. You've been helping thousands for over 30 years doing this. Can you tell me, there's a mentor of mine, another mentor, who says that when it comes to your God-given assignment in the earth, that this is not something that you decide, but it's something that you actually discover. Would you agree with that?
It's kind of funny, David. The last thing at 62 years old I thought I would be doing is running a television show. The absolute, carrying the ball over the goal line, you know, that was my thing, or something like that. It's been a very humbling learning experience for me, and it began 41 years ago now. I was in Vietnam. I was a corpsman assigned with the 7th Marine Division. And when I came home, I was sick. I had gained 40 pounds. The hair in the back of my head was coming out. The folds of my arm and under my arms were bleeding. I had mental problems. Everything seemed to have gone awry. And all the king's horses and all the king's men at the hospitals really would give me steroids or say, you're suffering from post-traumatic stress. You know, well, then why are my arms bleeding? Did they suffer from post-traumatic stress also? And I didn't take their Valium and didn't want their pills. And I thought there's got to be a cause. Something started this. What was it? Was it trauma? And I found out through a library card that it was an organism, probably in the Mekong Delta River in 1970, that latched onto me, a parasite, and gained access inside of my body and took hold. Literally, David, I thought 35 years ago now, I was the only person that had that organism in their body. And the reason I'm doing the television show so broadly now is because it's now my opinion 70–80% of Americans have this organism. They have acquired it from taking antibiotics, yes, or from alcohol, or from wheat, corn, peanuts. It grows on these foods that we eat. And once it sets up shop inside your intestines, it grows throughout your body. And it's very commonly what we call a pathogen. It's capable of causing disease in man. Just didn't know that 35 years ago.
I see. I see. Well, what I love about what you do, you're able to relate that which is plainly discussed in Scripture with the scientific data that we're able to actually look at today. And back in 1970, when you were looking at that information, you were looking at books that were 20 and 30 years old then, talking about this being the cause.
Right.
So what has happened between now and then in modern science that there seems to be a disconnect?
Sure. Well, we can step back a few million years. Mummies who were buried, sometimes we unmummify them. We go in and we open the tombs and we find, lo and behold, they look like you and me. They're dead, but they look and have skin texture just like you or me. Here's the key. Mummies were wrapped with olive leaves around their body. Olive leaf is a potent antifungal, antibacterial. So the fungus in your and my body that will eventually devour us, ash to ash, yes, was retarded with these olive leaves in these old burial tombs very often, especially the higher up people were mummified and so forth. So this goes back a long way, but take it a step further. The Old Testament, now this was news to me, and I've got to tell you an embarrassing story. Dr. Karen Hayter was interviewing me on FamilyNet one day, 15, 17 years ago, and I was telling her about this amazing discovery that I believed was Doug Kaufmann's. You see, Karen, there are some people who get fungus growing inside their body, and fungus growing inside anything, including walls, can be a very dangerous thing. And Dr. Hayter said, that's what Leviticus says. And I said, really, who is Leviticus?
Okay.
I thought this was a competitor of mine, you know, right. Joe Leviticus down the street. And she said, you know, Doug, the Old Testament. And I said, well, apparently, Dr. Hayter, I don't know it well enough. I don't remember anything in Leviticus about that. And she said, when you get home, very calmly, wonderful woman, and she has a little yellow pad, Leviticus 14:33, you know, start there.
Come on.
And so you know the story, right? Your viewers probably know the story. So the Lord told Moses and Aaron, when you go into this land called Canaan, it's yours, all of it, as far as you guys can see, it's yours. But if I put a spreading mildew in a house in that land, you must tell the high priest, the doctors of the time, hey, there's something gray and fuzzy growing on my wall. Now, my NIV Bible goes on to expound upon that at the bottom footnotes. Why was mildew so dangerous? Mildew was a fungus that could cause human disease. So we have the first reference, not in a medical book from a medical school, but in the good book. Yes. Do we trust it or don't we? I would say if it's in a medical book, be careful. If it's in the Bible, you know, trust that.
I see. Well, you know, in your show, people are still learning about fungus being the cause, and it seems like it's like brand new information, even to us, but the information has been out here for some time. I mean, I'm talking about some of the old medical references that you referred to, the books. One of those books, can you tell me the name of it again? Clinical Practices of...
Yeah, Clinical Practice of, the Practices of Clinical Mycology. Myco means fungus.
Yes.
Ology is the study of. And this is a course that goes right over the heads in medical school. Nobody gets it. We get bacteriology, we get virology, but not mycology.
And I checked you out on that because I looked up online various medical schools, those that we would consider to be the top notch of this country. Mycology isn't even offered as a course of study.
Horrible. Doctors tend to think toenail fungus, vaginal yeast infections, ringworm. This is as far as mycology goes. But the medical textbooks, or those that expound on fungus, say it can get into any tissue, it being fungus, can get into any tissue in the human body except the teeth, and it can degrade and it makes a poison. A poisonous byproduct is called a mycotoxin. Once these poisons start impregnating various organs in your body, you die. But before you die, you have miserable, miserable symptoms. So it's ironic and sad, isn't it, that the so well-documented role of fungus in all diseases, including cancer, isn't studied for 10 minutes in medical school.
So the doctors, when they're prescribing these antibiotics, these fungal derivatives, okay, even like for my own son, who was suffering from chronic ear infections, and the doctor repeatedly gave him antibiotics. It would go away for a minute, but then it would come back stronger. And we would go through that cycle a couple of times. The only way we were able to break that cycle was with the olive leaf extract eardrops.
Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing.
It's a nasty little secret, but do you want to know what causes a recurrence of ear infections? Amoxicillin. If you want to assure you're going to have a recurrence, you give the child the drug that the medical books say to give him. And let me make it worse. You know what one of the side effects of amoxicillin is? Hyperactivity. So you take Johnny to the doctor when he's 7 for chronic inner ear infections.
Yes.
The doctor, God bless him, they don't know, David, they really don't. He puts him on amoxicillin. 6 months later, the mother is in the same doctor's office and the child is bouncing off the walls. What's causing this? And the doctor is trained to say, we don't know. Oh, yes, we do. It's documented in his physician's desk reference that one of the side effects of amoxicillin, one of many, is agitation and hyperactivity. It's a sad look. If olive leaf extract can make it go away, why do we need doctors? Why do we need medicine? Why is this $4 trillion business called medicine striving to make $5 trillion? We really have to rethink. I think doctors are necessary. I think sometimes drugs are necessary.
Yes, sir.
But I think we really have to start rethinking when we run Johnny to the doctor and really kind of overseeing what the doctor is prescribing without our knowledge.
From a Christian perspective, I'm also observing that we seem to put our trust more in man and man's abilities than what God said as far as what should be our food, what should be our meat, what should be our sustenance. He said it from the very beginning, the herbs, the vegetables. And I mean, it doesn't mean we can't enjoy some of the other foods that we like, but at least do that, because I'm a living witness to the fact that our bodies will heal themselves. And if you give your body the proper nutrition, if you diet, exercise, do the things necessary to keep your body strong, your body will heal itself. You found that to be the case with the people who've given you so many testimonies.
And the Bible is a good reference point on that also, because the Lord said, my people will perish for lack of the knowledge. And it's really interesting to me how I refer to it on television as the dumbing down of America. You've heard the ads on the 6 o'clock news like I have. You know, this nice woman's voice. So take this drug, and by the way, if your right ear falls off, or if you fall over dead, well, that's just a symptom. And then she says, so why wait? Talk to your doctor right away. It's the dumbing, the stupefying of we Americans is going on at the cost of we and our loved ones by these drug companies, not bad people. Brilliant marketers. Look, I'm a capitalist like anybody. I believe in a good, hard day's wage, and I believe in that. But when you begin cheating and lying for the sake of one thing only, and impeding the health of fellow man, then you've gone beyond my people perish for lack of knowledge. You're contributing to the lack of knowledge.
Okay. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Doug and I met for the first time in person at the Grambling Health Seminar that was held at Grambling State University's School of Nursing Auditorium. And at that time, I had a chance to actually meet some doctors that are working with Doug, and the doctors, just phenomenal people in and of themselves. Very nice, very friendly, very personable doctors. They're not the type who are unapproachable. You know what I mean by unapproachable. Yeah. What I found about Dr. Lynn Jennings and Dr. Roby Mitchell, is it true that both of these doctors were doctors that, did they perhaps start off trying to prove you wrong, trying to prove your theories wrong, and then the more they tried to prove you wrong, they discovered that there was something to it?
Dr. Mitchell, wonderful, wonderful man, writes in our Fungus Link 1 book, in the opening chapter, that he said, you know, we doctors are deity. He said, we're not your regular people. We're way up there. We're deity. So when Doug told me playing basketball one day that I had toenail fungus and one day I was going to be really sick with health problems, I said, right. Which medical school did you go to, Doug? Because I graduated with honors, you know, from my medical school. And he said, funny, but it's come back to haunt me that I now concur with Doug after seeing thousands of patients that fungus is a huge deal. Same with Dr. Jennings. I don't think, look, who would buy this? What doctor that had gone through medical school would want to hear that they didn't learn everything in medical school? So that's a little standoffish if I'm a physician. But number two, this sounds a little bit like a panacea. What's Doug Kaufmann selling? And so I made a covenant years ago with the Lord that I wouldn't sell anything, that I wouldn't have Doug Kaufmann products. They would sell, my accountant every year knocks me on the forehead and says, if you came out with Doug Kaufmann or Know the Cause antifungal products, natural products, you'd be a bloomin' multimillionaire. You've heard some of the testimonials that we hear. I am a millionaire. I don't have that kind of money, but I am a millionaire due to the kindness that people will stand in front of a camera just like this one and say, thank you.
Yes.
I was lost, and now I'm found.
Well, I indeed was lost, even though I had been watching your show for 3 years prior to that seminar, because when Dr. Jennings and Dr. Mitchell, when they began to describe some things, especially Dr. Mitchell with his slideshow, and I began to see myself, some of the symptoms he was describing, I saw myself in what he was, but what got my attention the most was when he was able to use petri dishes to show the effectiveness of drugs versus that which comes in nature, and especially the iodine.
Yeah.
Now, can you talk a little bit about that and the effectiveness of iodine and iodine products?
Sure. Well, iodine was one of the early antimicrobials. Before we had antibiotics, people would use iodine. They'd pour it on a wound, they'd take it under their tongue, etc. So nature provides, God provides, all of the medicines we need along with all of the foods we need. Iodine is a big name right now because, you know, people are worried about being impregnated with fallout from the Japanese nuclear plant. Yes. And so everybody's talking about blocking the receptor sites which iodine would be attracted to with something like potassium iodide or something like that. And so it's getting a lot of press right now. The ocean swallowed up, much to my amazement, millions of gallons of raw crude oil. Do you think the ocean will swallow up some radiation also? I guarantee you God didn't make the ocean wrong. God doesn't want to hurt man. Satan wants to hurt.
That is amazing
And
to me.
I was so amazed as I watched every night with the media just tugging at my heartstrings. Not only did they have these ridiculous ads that said, take our pill, but then they would say, this is never going to cure itself. Here's a bird, it's dying. You know, trying to tug at our heartstrings. And in fact, God took care of it. And God's going to take care of this too. And if he doesn't, we get to go see him.
Those of us who are ready, which is another show. Well, I wanted to tell you that my parents, you know, because they're on the West Coast, and they were very concerned because of the media-generated fear regarding that. They couldn't find any kelp or iodine products because there was a mass
Exactly.
exodus.
Right?
Yes. So they asked me to find some. And so over there in Louisiana, I went to a health food store there, and they had some kelp products on the shelf, and I went ahead and purchased them for them and sent them out, but I also purchased some for myself. And I want to tell you something, and I need to thank you and Dr. Mitchell for this, because even though it had been nearly a year since y'all taught me that, I began to get some instant results with the iodine capsules. The kelp capsules, natural form of iodine. I noticed the most immediate symptom relief that I got was I have an arthritic big toe, ball of my big toe, and I remember you doing a show on this, and I believe you've referred to it as gout. Okay, and when I began to take those capsules, and I didn't just take a few, I took a lot.
Good.
And I'm not going to go into the dosage and all that because I don't want people to try to say, well, how much was...
All right.
I took what I felt I needed to take. I prayed about it. And when I began to take that dosage, within a few days, I was wearing shoes that I couldn't previously wear because that arthritic joint began, the inflammation, the swelling began to come down. And I thought to myself, if I'm swallowing it here and it's working down here, what else is it doing throughout my body? And it just to me, it gave me the assurance that there is something natural that we can do. I mean, I'm not saying doctors are bad people either. You've never said that. I feel like we need to be able to depend on more than doctors.
Yeah.
More than just this pharmaceutical industry, because God has already put something here naturally for us to use. And when you hear and you get the scientific reports that this does work, why ignore it?
Well, and so therein lies the marketing aspect of this. Kelp is seaweed.
Yes.
You know, dried seaweed, loaded with iodine, by the way. And this is the way fish stay healthy. Little organisms. Well, big organisms can use the same approach. To me, this is so remarkable, and we are so blessed to be able to walk into a health food store. Other countries don't allow this, but we can walk into a health food store today, April of 2011. Now, mark my words, by 2012, that's going to be hampered also. The drug industry does not want competition. They don't want you knowing that. There are now rules against you saying that. If you say, kelp helped my gout, if you were in the medical field, there are some strict ramifications of you saying that. I have to watch this on TV. I can no longer say that olive leaf extract is an anti-inflammatory, because inflammation now is classified as a disease. Only drug companies can treat inflammation. They're trying to do it with pregnancy. Oh, you can't take certain supplements while you're pregnant. Pregnancy is a disease. It is remarkable to me how few rights. We are in America, and we have more rights than most people.
Yes, sir.
But I'm telling you, our rights are being dwindled down by very, very evil people in very evil places. And ultimately, it looks like the money end of this is going to win. So once again, we have another biblical reference. Money is at the root of all evil.
Yes, sir.
I mean, it's really fascinating to me. If you really begin to study this, you learned how to fix your own problem. Don't you dare tell other people how to do that, or you can be handcuffed. That's where it's going in America today. It's a very, very scary thing.
I can't even say it as a testimony of what it did for me.
Yes, you can. For me to go on my show and say, well, all of you then should try kelp for your gout. Now, it would work. I'm telling you, it's antimicrobial. It kills fungus. It would work wonderfully, but the drug companies are putting a zipper on our lips in America. They don't want competition. But wait a minute, Doug. Seaweed is safe. You can put it on salads. You can put it on anything.
Right.
That's seaweed costs $12. That's exactly the problem. If their pills cause you to get sick, we used amoxicillin a few minutes ago.
Yes, sir.
If amoxicillin does cause recurrence, if amoxicillin does cause hyperactivity, that's good for another $200. And then you start seeing the psychiatrist. The child obviously has problems. That's why the brain is agitated. That's why the hyperactivity. That's good for thousands of dollars. Eventually, that amoxicillin, that mycotoxin, that fungal germ that inadvertently got inside his body to cure his ear but did worse, even the undertaker capitalizes on the ill effects of what prescriptive medicines are today. Medicine is currently, what, a $2 to $3 trillion company. And if you own a $200,000 company, you want it to be a $300,000. Medicine wants to become a $12 trillion company.
Yes.
And the way they do it is to stifle any competition. Don't you dare tell your neighbor not to drink milk because it creates mucus, and that's why you're not sleeping at night. Stifle all competition. Get on their wares until the day you die.
I see.
Scary.
It is scary. Well, where do you see it going? I mean, I think you may have just said where you see it going, but our freedoms, is this a situation where citizens on an individual grassroots basis must begin to stand up for themselves and our rights, as you say, because we have troops over in other lands fighting for our freedoms here, and yet we have entities within these borders that are, like you said, seeking to stifle us.
Yeah, and this isn't the way I wanted this conversation to go, but I think it's important, and I don't mean to be dramatic. I think it's important that we learn. My people perish for lack of knowledge. How do we learn? I hope my show teaches. I hope the Fount teaches. Yes. I hope school teachers begin teaching. It is really my goal in life to see synergism exist once again, like it did in the 1930s and 40s in America, when America was a proud country, willing to stand against an enemy. Today we vacillate, we waver, we fall down against an enemy that is proliferating across America as we're speaking. Yes, we have to be careful. We have to educate ourselves, most importantly for our family. And I'm telling you where that education really begins. And I know for your viewers, we're preaching to the choir. It begins in church. It begins with having a sound foundation on which to grow knowledge for that family.
Amen. Practical, sound knowledge that's scientifically based and biblically based. Because what I've seen you do is you have joined what's going on in science with what's in the Bible, and how can you lose? I love it when the science aspect of things verifies or actually confirms what's already written biblically.
That is such a good point. Genetically modified foods today. Is the Bible not specific that I will give you fruit with seed of like kind? We're commingling seeds and creating avocados that can walk across a desert now. It's unbelievable. When the Bible is not specific about something, then vacillate. The Bible says over and over again, with seed of like kind. I had no idea 40 years ago why the Bible said that. Genetically modified organisms were something so far-fetched it was science fiction. So be careful of science. This is a science that says we need fetus cells to help people with arthritis. So abortions are okay. This is a science that has really lost its way. No longer is a doctor free to do what he wants and he believes morally is right for a patient. All he's free to do is hang on to that 8.5 by 12 laminated piece of paper called a certificate. And the way he does that is by continuing to prescribe what the educators in medical school told him to prescribe. Lots of medicines. No longer is this man free. I see that 8-year education and the certificate that ensues almost as handcuffs for so many good men and women. That they are no longer safe to say, change your diet. It could be that simple, and I think 70% of all illness, it is that simple. And I think doctors believe that too.
And they do it themselves.
They do it themselves.
Yes, sir.
But they've got to satisfy the hunger, the lust that drug companies have for more money.
Talk to me a little bit, and we're going to conclude this interview in a moment, because you're right along that track. Standards of care. Because I recently read where it is against federal law for a doctor in California to treat a cancer patient with anything else other than radiation, chemo, or surgery. There is a prescribed standard of care, that there is a legal box that they are actually bound to function in.
And now let me scare you a little bit.
Okay, that was scary enough there. I'm just going to tell you.
We don't need to go further than that, do we?
No,
There,
go ahead.
there are people like you and me, David, who create those standards of care. They are well-educated people. They've come out of some of the finest halls in all of science. And 70 to 80% of them are paid by drug companies. That is not only inappropriate, there is a clear conflict of interest. When I'm telling you you need drugs and I'm receiving money from the drug companies directly into my wallet, I think that is the definition of insanity in America today. What would I do if I had cancer? That's a great question. I feel that nutrition led me into it. I know that store-bought meat is contributing to ill health in Americans. Not grass-fed, but store-bought. I know alcoholism is a fungal metabolite, is a poison. I know antibiotics are fungal metabolites. I think we're digging our own grave with our fork and spoon. And I think we need to stop and rethink this. If those who decide the standards of care are in the back pocket of the drug companies, I don't trust anymore. I've long said my problem is not their arrogance. My problem is their ignorance. If they only knew that what they're doing by taking money and then spewing out what they believe to be true, how do we know they're not being paid to say those things?
Oh my. Well, you've given us a lot to think about, and I thank you so much for your
time.
Great
to see you. This was enjoyable.
Appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, that was good.
That was really good.
Appreciate it.